Oh, hello there. Oh, you would like to learn the secrets of creating wonderful houses such as this? I can teach you. Pay attention, and I shall reveal all the secrets of the universe.
Hi folks, my name is Leif and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel called Devs and Dice, where I paint miniatures or craft awesome terrain for the tabletop. In today's video, I'm going to walk through the steps that I took to create a funhouse sort of build. This build is very much inspired by weird stones and tackle zones. Link up there if you want to check them out. Before we get started, I want to ask you a small favor. If you like the content I make, then please consider liking, sharing, subscribing. Thank you. With that out of the way, let's get cracking. Alright, so of course to start the process I've made some, well, half-cocked plans. These will serve nicely in terms of the proportions and the different elements that you will need for the build. These can be found in the description down below. Now, as per usual, I prefer to use foam core or foam board. The beloved child has many names. That's a saying in Swedish and it's true in this case. I simply use some glue stick and glue the plans that I've cut out onto the foam core. Remember those edges that we can use as hinges? Remember to just cut off one side of the paper. But in those specific instances where you've cut through the paper, just use a little bit of masking tape and it works as well as cutting through one layer. All of the doors and the different windows are cut out. Walls are joined using some masking tape. And here we have the base plate, which is a 4x6 3mm thick MDF that I cut out on my laser cutter. Here I'm trying to just make a little bit of room, I guess, for the entrance, which I'll be honest with you, not very necessary. Once I've done that, I hot glue the entire wall section of the bottom floor to the bottom plate. And we have a start. Now the process for the second floor is very similar. Cut out all of the shapes that we need. Make sure to tape all of the walls that we want to be joined and dry fit it. That's my recommendation at all times. And then I'm gonna use a little bit of carpentry here and do some half-hatching structure for that second floor. This is fairly simply done using some 5mm balsa wood dowels and some glue. It might look very advanced, but try it out, it's actually quite simple. You only need to ideally measure twice and then cut once. A little bit behind the scenes, but I've often had problems with my main source of light. It's too low. This is where Redgrass Games came in. They sent me their R9 desk lamp and asked me to try it out. And I have to say, it's amazing. Specifically, the thing that I find so amazing is look at the space I now have. No longer is my main source of light just at the very height of my head, blocking me every once in a while, and it looks quite nice. Thank you so much, Redgrass Games, for sending me the R9 desk lamp. Once we have the substructure defined for the second floor, we cut out some notches so that I can fit it in. And again, dry fitting is key. Once I have it dry fitted, I hot glue it in and it slips in just like a slipper, I guess. This is a good time to also add those 5mm wooden support beams that define the start of the second floor. These I glue in with hot glue and I glue them in separately, just for ease of managing everything. Once I have them in place, I glue in one side at a time to the very supports we just created. And it looks kinda nice. Now I'm gonna be honest here. I mean, I should have done this before gluing in the supports for the second floor, but yeah. Anyways, I'm going to use some coffee stir sticks and some white glue just to glue in the floorboards on the bottom floor. This was quite easy and it wasn't as complicated as it perhaps looked like. Once I had that in place, it was time to do the floorboards for the second floor. And here I had to think about the accessibility and ease of use. So the whole thing about this building is that perhaps a shard of meteor has been hit in the middle of the building. So that just makes sense that some parts of the middle structure will be destroyed. And of course, this is very convenient, but this is what I love about Mordheim specifically, that, you know what, the context or background supports some destroyed buildings and game design thinking. Now, once we have that in place, it's time to really start thinking about the final floor. So I start, as usual, cutting out all of the different templates, gluing them to some foam core, and then cutting them out. And here I want to showcase again that when you can, try to use the natural abilities of the foam core to create those nice hinges. But when you can't, you use some masking tape. All of this will be fine because we're gonna cover it later on. Now, gluing the third floor to everything was a little bit tricky, I'm not gonna lie, but it is quite easily done if you just have some patience, mark out where you should put some hot glue and where you shouldn't, and then take it step by step, wall by wall. And in no time, you will have the remnants of a third floor. That looks something like this. Now, once we have that in place, we might as well start to work on the actual gables of the roof and glue these in using some hot glue. Once we have all of that in, then it's time to do a 5mm timber balsa wood marathon and get all of those support beams in wherever we can. So basically that means all of the corners, all of the edges, I guess, on the bottom floors. And it takes a while to do this, and it's easy to forget some pieces here and there, but once you have it all in place, you're really starting to see the shapes of this building. When it comes to the windows, I have ordered quite a lot of these Lego windows. Now, links to them you can find down below. It's not an affiliate link or anything like that. I simply order them from a place called Bricklink, and I ordered, I think, about 200 of them a while back. Now, when it comes to some of the supports, it's a little bit finicky, so I pin the supports where I feel that I need a little bit extra structure. As you can see, the 5mm square dowels are used also for the internal support beams here and there to start defining the flooring of the second floor. And once that is on, it is time to use some of those coffee stir sticks to start building up the ground floor. Now, one thing that I didn't count on was that all of this was a little bit unstable, so I decided to go in with some support beams for my second floors here and there. At this time, I also felt like I could start working on the actual substructure for the roof. And as you can see, everything is weighed down with various things I had around in my hobby workshop. As I mentioned before, the middle of this building will be a little bit more destroyed, so I'm sort of envisioning that a meteor or part of the downfall of the twin-tailed comet sort of split this house in two. One thing not to forget is that little nook that I created. Don't forget the flooring on that one. I did, and it was a little bit tricky to get the planks there, but it worked out with some finessing. Now, here comes an interesting structure, I would say. This is supposed to be the balcony, and as you can see, I'm using those half joint techniques as done before. Once the white glue has settled, I simply hot glue in the base structure onto the actual building. And just to make sure that it's a little bit more secure, I add 3 support beams underneath. Sir Scale-a-Lot seems to approve. Now here I'm going to just pin some support beams for the actual railing of the balcony, and here I'm using some toothpicks because they're made of wood. And this is a tip I can give you, that make sure that you have some drilled bits that are the equivalent size of, for instance, toothpicks if you have access to those. Once I have the structure in place, it's a little bit of work to get the flooring in place, and then I start using the same coffee stir sticks to build up that railing. Now in the middle, I'm gonna make it a little bit destroyed because, yeah, the comet went through there. Using similar techniques to start building a little bit of a structure that's going to be ejecting out to the side, and then I hot glue in all of the walls, floors. But one thing I forgot here was that I needed to sand down the actual entrance. Here I'm making some simple A-frames, which I'm going to be using as the structure for the roof. And once those are in place, I'll simply hot glue on some coffee stir sticks to start creating the substructure of the roof. And as you can see, I alternate back and forth freely between white glue and hot glue. I think the main reason for this is that it depends on when I'm doing things. If it's late at night, I might as well use white glue because I know that in the morning it will have dried. I hot glue in the entire structure of this external building onto the main building. This was kind of scary, but in order to give it a little bit extra support, I of course made some support beams to lock it into place. And Sir Scale-a-Lot came along just to make sure I didn't get out of line. Here I'm just using hot glue for the first board, and then the subsequent boards I use white glue, which is something I commonly use just to make sure that I can continue working. Here I discovered that on that roof gable I actually didn't need some part of it, and it would be better if I removed some of it. So I did. Now it's time for some decorative timber on the facing structures, so I'm just adding them where I feel I want to. Sand texture gel is my poison of choice when it comes to getting in that wattle and daub feeling in between each of the timbers. This I just add with a brush and sort of stipple on, or just, try to make it look as natural as possible. And try to not hit the timber. If you do, it's not a huge thing. But remember also to hit the inside of the walls, or the edges of the walls. Some roof shingles, I hot glue them into place this time around because it's simply faster. But in order to secure everything, because this is made of paper, I do cover all of it in some white glue. And then the final part in construction is adding those Lego windows. On to priming. I prime using airbrush and some Vallejo black primer. Once that is done, I come in with some high flowing acrylic titanium white, and I use this to get a nice zenithal rendering all over the building. After that, we're gonna come in with some burnt umber transparent ink. I've been wondering back and forth if this is a step you can skip. I would say no, because the burnt umber gives you that nice dirty down base that we're gonna use to build upon with all subsequent colors. Here I'm using some light brown on the inside to start defining the color of the actual walls. Onto that, I use some flesh tone beige just to stipple in the slightest hints of highlights. Now the outside of the building, I decided I wanted it red because I don't have a lot of red buildings and I want some variation on my Mordheim board. Now this is where some of you will hang me out. I used some miniature paints and I think this is from scale 75 for the shingles. I was actually surprised how bad this covered, to be honest. But yeah, after 2 or 3 coats, I got it on. I used some vermilion hobby paint just to stipple in highlights on the red, which looks quite nice. Some light grey hobby paints is used to dry brush everything. And I mean everything from wood to the exterior to the interior, everything. Some lead belcher is used on those window sills, and you can be quite generous here because we're going to cover a majority of it with typhus corrosion, which is a texture paint. Once that dries, I'm going to come in with some riser rust to define some rusts here and there. And now it's time to put in some nice posters to tell some stories about the world that perhaps was and the world that is in Mordheim. These posters are something that I've made myself, and you can download them for free down below. Now, I don't know why, but in my world of Mordheim, there's lots of graffitiing and signs of different cults and such, so I like to use some white ink for this. Strongtone is the hero of all of this. And speaking of heroes, I would like to thank my patrons for their support. Special shout out goes to my champion and legend level patrons. So thank you Agresomnia, Andreas Winberg, Arjen Angenent, Fredrik Kierskard Lund, Gunnar Byström, Henrik Mannerstråle, Hunter's Cave, Jason Chastain, Madners, Magnus Solberg, Teddy, Urban, Anton Hand, Battle Corgi the 7th, Kiwi the Goblin, Niklas Swedenlind, Oliver Granlund, The Elder Kind, and What I Gotta Roll. Thank you so much, guys. You're awesome. Some finishing touches is using True Blood to put some blood splatter here and there just to give that grimdark sense. Now I'm happy with the shape of this building, but what would make it look better? Well, of course, some miniatures. There we go. I think this building came out great and it looks like good fun. It is a building that offers quite a lot of gameplay space and a whole bunch of different variations of tactics and strategies. It's a simple build, but it can be something that really makes your tabletop shine. If you watched so far, I want to thank you for that. If you want to see more videos, then YouTube recommends that you should be watching these. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.